What if the place meant to protect you slowly became the place that watched you, listened to you, and waited for you to fall asleep before reminding you that you were no longer alone? This is not fiction, not folklore invented for fear, but the documented beginning of one of the most chilling real-life hauntings in American history, the Bell Witch Case of Tennessee. In the early 1800s, the Bell family settled into a modest farmhouse surrounded by open farmland and thick woods, a quiet and isolated location that promised peace, privacy, and a simple life away from the chaos of towns and cities. John Bell, a respected man in the community, lived there with his wife Lucy and their children, and for a time, the house felt like a blessing. Days passed with routine farm work, evenings with shared meals, and nights with nothing but the sound of insects and distant wind. But slowly, almost deliberately, the house began to change. It started with faint noises, soft knocks echoing from the walls late at night, as if someone were tapping carefully, testing whether they would be heard. When John Bell rose to investigate, the sound stopped instantly, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence that felt heavier than the noise itself. At first, the family dismissed it as animals, with shifting or imagination, because the alternative was unthinkable. However, the sounds returned night after night, growing more frequent and more confident. Footsteps were heard crossing empty rooms, deliberate and slow, yet no footprints ever appeared. Doors that were locked before bed were found standing open by morning, and objects seemed to move just enough to be noticed, but never enough to be proven. The family began to sense that these disturbances were not random but controlled, almost curious, as if something unseen was learning their habits. The air inside the house often felt thick and charged, and some nights carried an unnatural stillness that made even breathing feel too loud. One evening, while walking near his fields, John Bell encountered something that disturbed him deeply. A strange creature, neither animal nor bird, watching him from a distance before vanishing into the trees. Though he tried to rationalize the sighting, it marked a turning point. Because after that night, the disturbances intensified. Whispers joined the knocking, faint at first, like breath brushing past the ear, barely forming words, but present enough to send chills through the children, who began to refuse sleeping alone. These whispers seemed aware, pausing when someone stirred, resuming when they pretended to sleep, creating the terrifying impression of being observed. The family reported hearing their names spoken softly in the dark, not shouted or distorted, but spoken clearly, calmly, as though by someone standing just out of sight. Fear slowly replaced denial as the house revealed intelligence, an awareness that could not be explained by animals or coincidence. The whispers grew clearer over time, forming sentences that drifted through rooms without echo, violating the laws of sound itself. The children claimed that something followed them, staying just beyond their vision, and some nights they woke feeling watched, unable to move, their beds lightly shaking as if touched by unseen hands. Sleep became fragmented, and exhaustion made fear sharper, more vivid. Then came the moment that erased all doubt. One night, as the family gathered together, the voice spoke clearly for the first time, steady and controlled, speaking directly to them without anger or urgency. It addressed each family member by name, pronouncing them perfectly, and responded to questions before they were even spoken aloud. The voice revealed private conversations, secrets discussed only between husband and wife, and events that had occurred far from the farm, things no outsider could have known. Panic spread as the family realized his presence was not guessing. It knew. It laughed softly during prayers, interrupted conversations, and demonstrated a cruel sense of timing, choosing moments of silence to speak. The Bells soon understood that the entity was not passing through their home, but had claimed it. Nights grew unbearable as the knocking turned violent, shaking walls, dragging sounds echoing across floors, and beds trembling just enough to wake sleepers without leaving physical evidence. Visitors were invited to witness the phenomenon, and many left shaken after hearing the sounds themselves, confirming that the family was not imagining what was happening. Word spread to the surrounding community, turning the Bell home into a place spoken about in hushed tones, yet no one could offer a solution or explanation. Ministers prayed, skeptics mocked, and neighbors avoided staying after dark, because even those who doubted the supernatural could not deny the overwhelming sense that something was wrong. Fear became routine, woven into every quiet moment, because silence now felt more dangerous than noise. The entity seemed patient, observant, and calculating, as though the early disturbances were merely an introduction, a warning of what was to come. The Bell family did not yet know its intentions, but one thing was clear. The knocking, the whispers, and the voice were only the beginning, and the farmhouse that once promised safety had become a place where something unseen was slowly preparing to cross a line that could never be undone. As the disturbances in the Bell household escalated, the presence revealed itself with a clarity and audacity that terrified not just the family, but anyone who dared to witness it. The entity, which the family came to call Kate, spoke freely, identifying herself as the spirit of a woman who had been wronged and buried on a land long before the Bells had settled there. She claimed she had been poisoned and murdered, and that her spirit had remained, watching and waiting, tethered to the land by unfinished business. At first, the family could hardly comprehend what this meant. How could a spirit linger in such a deliberate, conscious way? But the events quickly proved that Kate was intelligent, aware, and disturbingly capable of interacting with the living in a tangible, physical way. The children reported scratches and slaps, objects thrown across rooms, and invisible hands pulling them from their beds, all accompanied by laughter and whispers that seemed to mock their fear. John and Lucy Bell, already exhausted and terrified, attempted to rationalize the events as the product of stress or imagination, but the attacks only grew more violent and personal. Kate's interactions were no longer limited to random noises. She spoke directly to visitors, answered questions they had not asked aloud, and revealed intimate knowledge of events the family had not shared with anyone. She mocked prayers, interrupted meals with strange sounds, and often delivered messages in the voices of dead relatives, leaving no doubt that she could manipulate perception as easily as objects. The Bell home became a spectacle, attracting neighbors, curious locals, and even skeptics, all drawn by rumors of supernatural activity. Many of these witnesses reported the same chilling phenomena: unseen forces that slapped, pinched, or pushed them, furniture that moved on its own, and a voice that conversed with them as though it had been waiting for years to speak. Among the most extraordinary of these visitors was Andrew Jackson, who later became President of the United States. Historical accounts suggest that Jackson himself investigated the house, riding in a wagon that reportedly came to a sudden halt near the property. The horses refused to move, no matter how much they were urged, until a disembodied female voice commanded, "All right, General, you may proceed," and only then did the wagon continue. This incident left a lasting impression on Jackson, demonstrating that the Bell, which was not merely a local legend or superstition, but a phenomenon witnessed and acknowledged by prominent figures of the time. While these visitors marveled at the bizarre displays, the Bell family endured continuous torment inside their own home. Nights were punctuated by pounding on walls, doors slamming without cause, and whispers that revealed secrets, fears, and private arguments. Children were dragged from their beds, often screaming, while parents felt powerless to intervene. Sleep became impossible. Exhaustion and fear dominated every waking moment, and the family's mental and physical health deteriorated under the relentless attacks. The entity's cruelty seemed calculated, and Kate's intelligence was undeniable. She spoke of events long past, predicted future happenings, and even taunted the family with cryptic warnings, suggesting she had intimate knowledge of the land and its history. At one point, she delivered chilling messages in the voices of deceased relatives, causing confusion, grief, and terror. Attempts to confront or banish her, through prayer, exorcism, or rational explanation, were met with derision, physical retaliation, and psychological torment. The Bell family realized that the presence was not random, but purposefully targeting them, establishing dominance over their home and their lives. As the weeks and months went on, the entity escalated its physical interactions. Visitors described feeling unseen hands grip their shoulders, being scratched or pushed, and witnessing objects levitate or move inexplicably across rooms. The children began to speak of Kate as though she were a member of the family, acknowledging her presence with fear and respect, terrified of provoking her wrath. The voice spoke with a sinister clarity, answering questions before they were asked, mocking prayers, and laughing at the family's growing desperation. At its height, the Bell Witch phenomenon transformed the farmhouse into a place where reality seemed unstable, where natural laws were ignored, and where no one could feel safe, even in daylight. What terrified the family most was the entity's consistency and intelligence. She was not a fleeting ghost, but calculated presence, capable of manipulation, deception, and cruelty, and utterly unwilling to leave. The story reached a pivotal moment when John Bell, the family patriarch, began experiencing direct threats to his life. One night, a strange vial of poison appeared near his bed, accompanied by a chilling statement from the entity. "I have given him the poison." Soon after, John fell violently ill, suffering a slow and painful decline, with the family realizing that Kate's interference was no longer confined to harmless pranks or sounds. It had become lethal. Despite attempts to seek help from neighbors, clergy, and anyone who might intervene, the Bell Witch's influence persisted, and her actions left no evidence that could be addressed through conventional means. As John Bell's condition worsened, the story of the Bell Witch spread throughout Tennessee and beyond, solidifying its place in American folklore and history. Scholars, journalists, and historians have documented the case extensively, noting the consistency of eyewitness testimony, the physical manifestations reported, and the sheer number of individuals affected by the phenomenon. The Bell Witch was described not as a chaotic spirit, but as a sentient, methodical force, one capable of observation, planning, and punishment. Her motives remained a mystery, though some speculated it was vengeance for the historical wrongs done to her in life. As the weeks turned into months, the family's ordeal continued unabated, each day bringing fresh manifestations of Kate's power. Visitors were warned that approaching the house after dark could result in scratches, bruises, or worse. Yet, despite the fear, people came, drawn by curiosity, disbelief, or the desire to witness something unexplainable firsthand. The Bell Witch had become a living legend, known not only for the supernatural acts she committed, but also for the psychological impact she inflicted on everyone who encountered her. Families reported trauma lasting years, and the house itself remained a symbol of dread, a location where the veil between the living and the dead seemed inexplicably thin. While the Bell family struggled to survive each night, the broader community became obsessed with the tale, documenting every occurrence, noting the increasing intensity, and debating whether this was divine punishment, demonic possession, or a natural phenomenon beyond comprehension. But no explanation could account for the intelligence, cruelty, and precise targeting of the entity. Kate was not merely haunting the Bells. She was orchestrating events in a way that terrorized, humiliated, and controlled them, demonstrating an understanding of human behavior that was deeply unnerving. The story of the Bell Witch is not just a tale of ghostly phenomena. It is a case study in fear, control, and the unknown, one in which the supernatural became a tangible, terrifying reality for a family in rural America, and for anyone who dared enter the Bell home. Even after decades, researchers and paranormal investigators continue to debate the authenticity of the events, but the consistency of historical accounts, first-hand testimonies, and the sheer number of witnesses make it clear that what the Bell family endured was far beyond ordinary explanation, leaving a legacy that endures as one of the most chilling and well-documented hauntings in history. As the relentless torment continued, the Bell family realized that the haunting had escalated to a level that could no longer be ignored or explained away. The voice known as Kate grew bolder and more sinister with each passing night, often appearing to communicate with purpose, taunting them and demonstrating an intelligence that seemed almost human, yet horrifyingly otherworldly. The children were the first to notice a pattern in her attacks, sensing that she was teaching them fear, testing their limits, and marking her presence with both physical and psychological control. Furniture would levitate, beds would shake violently, and unseen hands would pinch, scratch, or even choke, but always with a calculated restraint, as if she wanted them to suffer, without leaving evidence that could be used to defend themselves. Doors slammed with force that could cause injury, yet often not enough to make the family leave, creating an atmosphere of tension so thick that even sunlight could not dispel it. The entity's intelligence became clearer when she began predicting events in the family's lives and revealing secrets that only a few trusted people could have known, proving she had been observing them long before the first knocks on the walls. At times, she spoke in the voices of deceased relatives, sometimes friendly, sometimes mocking, leaving the family in a constant state of confusion and fear. The community around the Bells grew increasingly aware of the events, and although many were skeptical, countless witnesses corroborated the phenomena, describing similar unexplained movement of objects, mysterious sounds, and the sensation of being watched. Visitors were often struck by the sheer intensity of Kate's presence. Some reported being scratched or pushed without anyone near them, while others described a chilling whisper in her ear that referenced her personal lives in ways that seemed impossible. Even the most skeptical observers could not explain the accuracy and consistency of these interactions. The true horror reached its apex when the attacks became fatal. John Bell, the patriarch, began experiencing symptoms that doctors of the time could not explain: violent illness, weakness, and distress that coincided with the entity's direct attention. One night, a mysterious vial of poison appeared near his bed, and in the eerie calm that followed, Kate's voice was heard declaring, "I have given him the poison." The declaration was not just a threat. It was a confirmation that she wielded control over life and death. John Bell eventually succumbed, and his death marked a turning point in the haunting, demonstrating that the bell which was not constrained by human laws, morality, or reason. The family's grief was compounded by the fact that Kate did not vanish with his passing. Instead, her manifestations continued unabated, shifting their focus to other family members and maintaining a terrifying presence in the house. Rumors of her ability to harm or even kill spread to the surrounding counties, adding to lore and drawing attention from across the state. Even years later, investigators, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts visited the Bell Witch house, reporting the same chilling phenomena: unexplained noises, moving objects, whispers in the dark, and a sense of being observed by an unseen intelligence. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the haunting was the apparent sentience of Kate. She was not merely a spirit reacting to disturbance. She displayed strategy, understanding, and a conscious manipulation of her victims' emotions. This intelligence was evident in the precision of her attacks, the timing of her appearances, and the way she seemed to select moments to instill maximum fear. The psychological impact on the Bell family cannot be overstated. Chronic fear, sleep deprivation, physical injury, and a constant intrusion into their private lives created an environment of sustained trauma. Children were left terrified to sleep alone. Adults lived in near constant anxiety. And the home itself became a symbol of dread, a place where safety was impossible and peace was an illusion. Kate's dominance extended beyond the household. She engaged with neighbors, visitors, and even prominent figures such as Andrew Jackson, showing that her influence was not confined to the Bell family alone. Witnesses described feeling unseen hands, hearing voices that spoke with familiarity, and sensing a presence that observed every movement and emotional response. The legend of the Bell which endured long after the original events, but what made it unique was the meticulous documentation and consistency of reports, suggesting that this was not a single person's imagination or a fabricated story. The haunting was deliberate, targeted, and sustained, leaving behind a legacy that scholars, writers, and paranormal investigators continue to study to this day. Perhaps the most chilling detail was Kate's claim that she would return after 7 years, a declaration that blurred the line between the natural and the supernatural, forcing the Bells and their community to accept that her influence might extend indefinitely. Even after the years passed, reports of strange occurrences in the area persisted, adding credence to the notion that the Bell Witch was not a fleeting phenomenon, but a lingering presence that could manifest at will. Historians have noted the unique combination of physical evidence, eyewitness testimony, and the breadth of affected individuals, making the Bell Witch one of the most thoroughly documented hauntings in American history. Unlike many ghost stories that rely on anecdotal experiences, this haunting included multiple witnesses, from family members to curious visitors, and even public figures, each reporting phenomena that defy conventional explanation. The impact on American culture is still evident, inspiring books, documentaries, and paranormal investigations that attempt to analyze what exactly transpired in that Tennessee farmhouse. Yet despite decades of speculation and research, the Bell Witch remains a mystery. Was Kate a vengeful spirit, a demonic entity, or something entirely beyond human comprehension? The answer eludes scholars and skeptics alike, but the enduring terror she inflicted on the Bell family cannot be denied. Even today, visitors to the property report strange sensations, fleeting shadows, and unexplained noises, suggesting that the entity, or at least a memory of her power, remains. The story is a reminder that some hauntings are not fleeting or isolated, but calculated, intelligent, and deeply personal, leaving indelible marks on the lives of those who encounter them. For the Bells, the haunting was a relentless psychological and physical siege, one that ended only with John Bell's death, but left lasting trauma for surviving family members. Kate's presence was never fully banished, her legacy etched into American folklore as a haunting that challenged belief, reason, and the boundaries of the natural world. Today, the Bell Witch House stands as both a historical site and a symbol of fear, a place where whispers, scratches, and unseen movements remind visitors that some spirits do not simply vanish. They linger, watch, and perhaps wait for the next opportunity to assert their power. The Bell Witch story continues to captivate, horrify, and mystify, a haunting that transcends time, culture, and skepticism, leaving one simple, terrifying question. If this was real then, is it still real now, waiting just beyond the walls, unseen but ever present, ready to strike again?